Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a video that's a bit different from my usual content. If anyone is a frequent viewer of the channel, first I want to say thank you for that, and also if you're not already a subscriber, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. It's a great way to help me out and to help me bring content like this to you. Usually my videos consist of 1/6 scale projects that I start and then go through the course of production till finally it's finished. Or I do reviews on 1/35 scale or 1/16 scale plastic models and builds where I go over the kit, I build it, and I go over many of the kit's attributes as well as ways to improve it or what to watch out for, all that great stuff. This here is a bit different because what we have here is a 1/6 scale item. However, this is not something I'm going to be building. This is something I'm going to be leaving in its original condition. And this was something I just couldn't resist. When I got this box in the mail, I couldn't help myself, and it's really a bit of a time capsule piece. And it's one that I really want to share with you all. So, what is this, you may ask? Well, this here is a 1/6 scale German Goliath tracked demolition vehicle, and it's from the company Black Box Toys, if you haven't already guessed so already. And this here is a very interesting model that's been on the market since 2010 or so, and it's one that came and quickly evaporated, never to be seen from again. As for where this model came from, well, this model, along with almost countless others that are all in 1/6 scale, I might add, was a very recent acquisition to my collection, and was actually something that was gifted to me by a very, very generous person out there who watches my videos and is a fan of my work. And if you are watching this, you know who you are. I cannot thank you enough for the gift. Seriously, this was probably one of the most overwhelming gifts I have ever received in my life. And I only hope I could do it justice by bringing it all onto video at some point, starting with this one over here. Seriously, I cannot thank you enough. You are truly a superhero, and I'm almost at loss for words at how monumental of a gift this was. So, with that out of the way, back to this item that we have here. This item was released again by the company Black Box Toys in 2010. And for those who don't know, Black Box Toys was a company out of China during that era that was producing 1/6 scale items, be it figures or accessories, things like that. Not really necessarily military stuff, although they did release an EOD robot, if memory serves. It's been a while, guys. I'm going by fumes here, but one of their more interesting items was the Goliath. What also made this model very interesting was that it was made entirely 100% out of metal. And yes, I know there are some people out there, when they hear that phrase, all metal, they lose their mind thinking it's the best thing ever, and it just, nothing else can compete because metal, by definition, is going to be amazing. That necessarily isn't the truth all the time. As I frequently say on this channel, just because it's metal doesn't mean it's better. But we'll see when I crack the box open. Anyway, these models, like I stated before, came out around that era in the 2010 period, and I want to say they were fairly expensive of the period. Back then, I want to say these things retailed anywhere between 150 to maybe 250 US dollars, give or take, which at that time was actually fairly expensive. This is before the economy turned into what it is today, but that's another topic. Anyway, these models came out, they came and went, they made a production batch of them. Once they were produced, they were all sold off, and that was it. So if you are watching this in 2024 when I'm filming this, and you want one of these, you're screwed. You're not going to be able to find one. These are the type of things that you may find on the secondhand market on places like eBay, swap meets, on forums, 1/6 scale Facebook groups, and you may find them mint in the box. You may find them opened or wrecked. That's generally how you're going to find one. I frequently get emails from time to time for people that see some of my older content, and they see a review that I did in the past on something, and they're like, wow, that's really cool, where can I find it? And it's like, sadly, you missed the train on it. It doesn't exist anymore. This is going to be one of those things. So just for archival reasons, it's very special to have one mint in box, like literally like fresh in box. The only reason why it's open is I opened it not knowing what it was when I was going through the container, stumbling into this item over here, and just salivating, because it's like, wow, I actually got to see one. Because I remember when these came out, they were all over the forums. Anyway, So, if you want to find one, secondhand market's going to be your only choice. So hopefully this video, again, acts as some kind of archival type reference. Something else I also want to reference is that when these models came out, there were two other options of Goliaths or Beetles that were on the market. One of which was actually one of the first contenders, or releases I should say, was not a fully built example, but it was a full resin kit from the company Panzerwerk. If anyone watches my 1/6 scale content, you'll know that name very familiar, specifically my older content, because sadly he doesn't exist anymore either. Well, Panzerwerk produced the Goliath as a full resin kit, and it was something that you bought and put together yourself. Not really sure how many he actually sold or casted. However, it was an option that was available for a little period of time in the early 2000s. Fast forward a little bit to the end of the 2000s, Dragon went ahead and entered into the market with their own Goliath model that was a fully assembled model, and that was something that was offered as a Cyber Hobby exclusive. I could already hear several people screaming about that, but that was the thing. Dragon would also produce some small release items that were really, really interesting, really cool, and they would sell it through one of their exclusive vendors known as Cyber Hobby, which was a store out in Hong Kong. You had a website, you ordered through them, and you would eventually get the thing in the mail. Some people would have problems with some of the stuff coming in broken, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the Goliath was a model released by Cyber Hobby, and that was also something that was on the market, but again, in limited numbers. So fast forward to 2010, Black Box Toys releasing this model over here was one that had some fairly decent interest to it, specifically since it was pretty available at the time of release. Since then, there have, as far as I know, been absolutely zero other options for Goliaths that have been released in 1/6 scale on the market in terms of traditional companies or in terms of even any 3D printed models. However, I'm pretty sure that's subject to change at some point in time. These days, people are 3D printing just about anything, and I'm pretty certain a Goliath is bound to make its appearance at some point in time. Maybe partially due to this video. Who knows? Anyway, okay, enough jibber jabber. Let's actually go ahead and look what's going on here. So these models came drop shipped in this type of a container. If anyone has ever bought stuff from China back in the 2000s or the 2010s, this carton here should look fairly familiar. So there is absolutely zero type of graphic design whatsoever. It's literally just a shipping carton, like you see. That is just taped up, and we have a nice little label here with the important information. Black Box Toys, blackboxtoys.net, which I Googled. They don't seem to be around anymore. And I quickly just verified that on my phone, and no, they are indeed defunct. So this here, again, for archival reasons, it's pretty cool to have one mint in the original box. Of course, we have some stuff here for the basic info. Ages 14 and up. Collectible item, not a toy. Of course, it's a model. Warning, choking hazard. Small parts, not intended for children. So I should be okay. And this here is basically what the item is. The company, item number BBT-8007, 1/6 scale Goliath. Now, I'm not sure if they had different versions of this model and different paint schemes. That was something that was commonly done, like by DID, for instance, when they did their Nibblewoofer and they did their Kittencrad. They had 2 or 3 different painting options between Panzer Gray, yellow, and a camouflage or 2. I don't think that was done with the black box version. It was done with Dragon. Dragon did do that, but not these guys. These things were only released in Panzer Gray, as you'll see once I crack it open. But here goes some other important pieces of information right there for those who are inclined. And there we have it. Okay, so let's go ahead and crack this thing open finally. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I opened up the tape. And here we have the contents. So the model itself is secured into this styrofoam little sarcophagus over here. And it just pours out. Originally, again, the thing would have been completely sealed with the tape, but when I was going through, checking everything out, I quickly opened it up with my knife, revealing the contents. Opening the thing up fully gives us the Goliath. Alright, so this thing here is originally packaged by them. This has not seen the light of day since it left China back in 2010. Like I stated before, it's all Panzer Gray in color, and the Panzer Gray seems to be the same type of color we see on other 1/6 scale models from the same period. Again, what comes to mind would be the Nibblewoofer and the Kittencrad from DID. I'm going to first start with the main vehicle itself. Pulling this out here. See how it is very nicely wrapped. This vehicle does have some really cool features to it that I will be going over in a moment. It is extremely well wrapped with this white styrofoam over here. I hate to rip it up for extraction, but you gotta break an egg to make an omelet. Okay, so really quick, trying to get the styrofoam out from under the tracks is very, very hard in its current state. I'll briefly go over some of the functions. So the model does have a functional spring suspension system, which sounds great. The model also has working track links, which also sounds great. The problem is, it don't spin or roll for crap. This is something that was commonly seen on a lot of models similar to this that were coming out of China from this era. Again, I encountered this with the Nibblewoofer from DID, where it did the exact same thing where the wheels were locked up, and if you try to rotate it, you actually unscrew the wheels. There was actually a very quick procedure that I saw and I did that corrected this, and my Nibblewoofer spins absolutely freely without undoing the wheels. As for what the technique was, sadly this was 2006. I didn't make videos at the time. YouTube really wasn't a thing at that time, so that information is still stuck in my head. However, if anyone wants to see how I did that, send me a DID Nibblewoofer and I'll gladly make a tutorial on how to fix that. But back to this one over here. So in order to get the styrofoam out, the best way to do it is to unscrew this little Phillips screw right here in the sprocket. The roller, the rear idler spins freely. It's just this guy here which is pretty stiff. So I'm just going to go ahead, loosen that up a little bit. And oh wow, look at that, the track now spins. There we go. I still feel guilty unwrapping this one, but like I say in my other vintage model kit videos, it becomes like a Highlander situation where there can be only one. So this one is not going to be the one. Alright, you come on. So really quick, everything again is made out of metal. I mean by everything, I literally mean the entire thing is metal. There are no polymer parts whatsoever on the model. The only polymer accessory is the little radio control or remote control that comes with the piece, which is a nice gesture. Scale seems to be about right. Detailing, okay. And then we get to the features. So like I said before, it has a fully sprung spring suspension system, much along the lines of the real one. And we do have little road wheels, again, like the real one. But again, this is where the material that the thing is made in comes to bite you. Because of the sheet metal construction, this thing is basically all just flat plate that's laser cut, that's all bolted together. There are some limitations, and detailing is definitely one of them. So I'll just start with the track. If you see the track, here goes the track link right over here. Has the outer pad and the inner surface, and it looks more or less like the part. However, if you look at a real Goliath track link, it has much more geometry compared to what we have here. This is much simplified. There would be embossings on the face of the track link, and also with the way the teeth are bent into the link, because really the Goliath link is all sheet metal stamped, which is ironic. Consider this is plate steel and it's lacking some of those features. But either way, those features are absent with this construction method. Also, with the way the piece is bolted together, we do have exposed fasteners here and here and here, as well as a few other locations. This does detract from the look of the model, as the real one did not have large Phillips sections or fasteners in those locations. The wheels, again, simplistic, but I would say overly simplistic. Same is also true for the sprocket and the return roller. And going on to its features, like I stated before, it's got a working spring suspension system, which is great. However, and this is something that I've seen referenced a lot with the black box toy stuff, its craftsmanship is a bit chintzy. So like right over here, we have this strut that comes out that holds up the sprocket mount, and it's wiggly loose. The spring suspension system works on some units, on others it just stays stuck in this position over here. The wheels do not rotate, they are just held in place with a little fastener right there. They're just clamped down so they do not spin. If anyone is watching this, by the way, and saying to yourself, you know, I could RC convert that. Yeah, no, you can't. Not really. You really, really, really can't. You would have to essentially redesign the whole unit. To that point, you might as well just literally make one from scratch at that point, in my opinion. If you try to RC convert this, you're kind of going down a fool's errand, in my opinion. Okay, so that's the problem that we have here with it. Also, I noticed some areas the paint was missed in certain locations. We have some exposed metal poking through. Looks like there was a bit of overspray in that area. When you try to rotate the tracks, you can see that the fasteners tend to undo themselves. Again, this is typical for models made from this era. Probably the biggest ding that the unit does have is the bumper. If you look at the bumper, it has the overall shape of the piece. However, the manufacturing method is very, very different. If you look at this one here, it's all flat plate, and the only round sections are what appear to be these little rollers on either side. This is completely wrong from all the examples of Goliaths that I've seen. The bumper is actually made out of bar stock, and it's all formed and then probably welded together, absent on this example here. Some of the positive attributes, you do have a lot of functionality in terms of hatches. So we have this little hatch over here that pops open. No interior detailing, but you can model the piece, I suppose, with the explosives on the inside. We have here the panel right here that goes in the center. And this gets held in place with these two fasteners that you unthread, and then you just bolt the entire unit in place, giving you the main axis cover. The other thing that's unique is that the rear section here is actually hinged, which is nice. And we do have some interior detailing where we have a spool in this section over here. The wire is not included, but this is something that can easily be added by the owner, which is something I'm more likely going to do. Then we have here the other accessory that comes with the set, which is the control box right here. The control box appears to be, yeah, I was wrong. It's not plastic. It's all metal. It's literally all metal. And here goes the piece. Has a nice little leather strap over here to supply with your figure. And here goes some very rudimentary looking controls. Not sure what they do. I'm pretty sure the red one probably makes it go boom, but who knows. What is absent is the engine detailing. I believe the real Goliaths were powered by a small little gas engine. I believe some may have also been electrically driven, if I'm not mistaken. And I do know there were some versions that were straight up radio controlled as opposed to the two-way wire remote control. Again, way ahead of their time. Pretty cool, interesting vehicle in its own right. So there we have the Goliath. Let me go ahead, clean it up a little bit, and let's get back to when this thing is ready for display. Because believe it or not, I'm not going to do anything to this example over here. This one I am going to leave, again for archival reasons, completely stock, untouched, unaltered by myself, and it's going to stay in that format just for collector's sake and also for archival reasons, as I've already touched upon several times. But that doesn't mean I can at least get some of the stuff working again. First thing I'm doing is I'm actually getting the suspension to function again, which is reason why right now there's hardly any track tension on the setup as is. The reason why the suspension is hanging up, it has to do with the way the thing is painted. The pieces are designed to function, but they are still very stiff. They never had a break-in period. And on top of that, there's layers of paint built up in certain areas, which are hanging everything up. In order to loosen this up, I just added a small little drop here of 3-in-1 oil, which, by the way, was also a gift from the guy who sent it. He probably knew what I had to do. And I'm just going ahead and working the oil into the little recesses right now. And as you can see, it's having an effect, and it's starting to reactivate some of these sections. I'm adding a little drop of oil to the stem right over here, and also on either side here of the swing arm. Once that oil gets in there, it's actually doing a pretty good job loosening it up. This one here, I had a little drop, but I'm doing the same thing to the little area here that has to go inside the pontoon. Oh yeah, much better. So right off the bat, that's one easy step to really make the thing much more improved and enhanced compared to the way it is out of the box. Out of the box, it's just basically just a rock, so to speak. Nothing moves, and it kind of has the track tension a mess in that format, specifically when you try to take the styrofoam off. Of course, there may be some oil residue behind, which just cleans up pretty easily. The paint's pretty durable from what I see, so you can just wipe the oil off with just a rag and you should be okay. It is one of those situations where literally a small little dab will do ya. So this one's working, this one's working. Let's go ahead and get this guy operational too. Oop, kind of slid out too much. As for the metal construction, it appears to be all aluminum. So take that for what you will. I don't believe it's steel, or I think it might be half and half. Some of it might be steel, some of it might be aluminum, if I'm not mistaken. The suspension does not have a limiter in it, so the piece can overextend and pop out like that. Something to bear in mind if you have one of these, or you have access, or ever encounter one in the wild. But there you go. It cleans up very well. The whole mount is a bit loose. It's a bit chintzy. I don't know why. For me to figure out what makes one of these stick, I actually have to take the whole thing apart. I'm not going to do that for this one. It's not going to happen. This one here, I'm just working with what I'm given. How many times do I get to say that on this channel? Usually I end up like rebuilding something from the ground up and super detailing it. This time, no. This one, again, it has some personal... Again, for the reasons that I mentioned. If I had access to another one that was, say, a wreck, oh yeah, no, then the gloves are off and I would do whatever I wish to it. Okay, so, as you can see, the spring suspension on this one is now fully functional. It's actually pretty nice. And after a little bit of fiddling and breaking in the parts, just by actuating them repeatedly, the suspension was brought back to its full operational status. As you can see, the model has a nice little spring to it, and the suspension does a decent job with keeping it up, and it doesn't have any sagging type problems in that regard. And while I have the thing on the table, I might as well do the customary ECA thing and give this thing a quick walk around. And this here is the World War II German Goliath tracked mine, also known as the Goliath demolition vehicle or the Beetle tank. Either way, this here was a vehicle that was way ahead of its time. When we think of modern conflict, we think of the POV drones, how they're slamming into the side of tanks and blowing them up, and thinking, wow, that's some crazy Terminator future type technology. However, the Germans were really the first to do it back in World War II, and that's what we have here. Essentially, what it is exactly what I just described. This thing is a drone for all intensive purposes. It's a remote-controlled vehicle that's tracked. It will be filled with explosives, and this thing would be going out on the battlefield to destroy certain objects. Either be it a tank, where it could drive underneath it and detonate, or it could be going ahead and driving into a barricade or a fortification, or anything that would be very hazardous to have a bunch of pioneers show up and try to do it manually. Again, very ahead of its time. The Goliaths were electrically driven. I believe later versions may have been gas driven and were radio controlled. The first ones were straight up remote control, where it was like a big old Tamiya model where you have a remote with a long wire and the thing would just scurry along until finally you drive it to where it needs to go. Surprisingly, a decent number of these things were manufactured. They entered service in 1942 and were manufactured by Borwag and Zundap, the motorcycle manufacturer, and about 7,500 plus change were produced in all. These things saw service on both the western and eastern front and were able to hold a maximum amount of 60 kilograms of explosives. The units would be held on a special wagon that would be towed behind a Kettenkrad or a Kugelwagen or an SCKFC 250 or anything along those lines. It would be wheeled to the front and then it would be deployed. Really though, the biggest problem and shortcomings it had was the technology of the period, with the 1940s electronics being for the motors, the batteries, things along those lines. It was an interesting idea, but it just wasn't fully developed, or the technology just wasn't there yet. Fortunately for the Allies, these things weren't the Wunderwaffen that were needed to win the war, and a lot of them were captured by the Allies, and many were studied and analyzed, and the idea was a viable one, but it's one of those things that was kind of shelved for a number of decades. Again, fast forward 80-something years later, and this platform, or I should say this concept, has really come into full fruition now. And that's basically all there is to mention on the model's features and details. It's a very simple piece, and essentially it's what you see is what you get. I will also say, and in case anyone's wondering, yeah, John, but we've seen you do some crazy stuff in 1/6 scale. Is it possible to take one of these and polish it up? And the answer is actually, I believe so. However, there is going to be a limit of what you can do with certain aspects of the kit, namely the tracks, for instance, unless you do a complete track replacement, which honestly I wouldn't do. The metal tracks are kind of cool. It's kind of the hallmark on this kit. But yeah, it actually leaves some room for improvement. However, this particular version, like I mentioned before, I'm going to leave in the El Natural as original state as possible, just again for archival reasons. But if I ever get another one of these units, say, oh, I don't know, in a trashed wreck state, then that one would definitely be a good candidate for an ECA upgrade. It would actually make for a fun project. However, the likelihood of me having that opportunity, probably pretty slim. These things aren't exactly that common or that plentiful out there. I'm not really sure how many were even produced, but it's not nearly as much as, say, the Dragon Jeep or the Sherman or things like that. So the likelihood of me coming across a project like that, I would say fairly slim, but hey, stranger things have happened. It would also be pretty cool to track down one of the Dragon counterparts and do a nice little compare and contrast between the two to see exactly which one is the king of the Goliaths in 1/6 scale. But again, that's something that may or may not come down the road. Who knows? As for this particular unit, it is not going to be put back into the box. Instead, it's going to be put in prominent display in my 1/6 scale German action figure collection, alongside my 1/6 scale German action figures and the other 1/6 scale German knickknacks and weapon sets that I've accumulated and collected over the years. And something tells me I'm going to have to pry this radio from Klaus's hands, because I don't think he's going to give it to me willingly. And I don't blame him. This thing here, the real one, must have been really, really, really fun to drive. Specifically, if it drives anything or handles like an armor tech, this thing would have been a complete blast. Specifically if you could get to the underbelly of a T-34, but I digress. And with that, that wraps up this 1/6 scale review video for the Black Box Toys German Goliath demolition vehicle. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel, where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being 1/6 scale review videos like this one over here, or my usual content being 1/6 scale project update videos and smaller scale model showcase videos that frequently get posted. Another way to keep in the loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There I have photographs of many of the larger and smaller scale builds that have been seen on this channel in the past. And of course, furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks again, I'll be seeing you all again on the next one. Till then. Okay, come on, you had your fun. Let me have it. Let me have it. Come on. Ugh. 5 more minutes.